Hi everyone, welcome back to China Freedom File. And those public security officers just ran to those Christian mothers and roughed up and tried to capture their cell phones and cameras violently. And it really make you wonder what kind of a country would do this to a peaceful mamas kind of gatherings, a Christian fellowship that they did not really bother anyone in public. I mean, they gather at their at home, and they didn't really speak loud or sing loudly. So this is just go on and on. So please continue to remember those who were hurt, wounded during this raid, and pray for mercy, really, for those policemen, that their hearts could be touched, even when they were ordered to read this Mother's Fellowship. I mean, they have their own mothers. I mean, they should see from their eyes these Christian mothers posed no security threat, no harm to anyone. And they were just fellowship together and peacefully, joyfully, and really there's no reason or concern. So, but today my focus is really to give you an update again on what's happening in Hong Kong lately after the imposition of this evil Hong Kong national security law by the Chinese Communist Party, and what's the implications, especially on religious freedom in Hong Kong and in relationship with mainland China as well. First of all, I want to really make a definition of religious freedom because when we talk about the violation of religious freedom, we need to know what does it mean. I mean, the term of religious freedom. And in general, according to both the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 18, and the UN International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, also Article 18. It says basically two components, two fundamental components of the term religious freedom. Number one is religious freedom means freedom of religious belief. It means anyone on this earth, as long as you are a human being, no matter you're a child or adults, are entitled, should enjoy the basic freedom of religious belief. You can choose your faith, your religious belief. One religion over the other peacefully, and you can choose not to believe, or you can choose to change your belief from this time, to another time, and you can choose one of the denominations of one religion over the others. So in general, people also call this freedom of conscience, or, I mean, in a recent, more popular way of calling it, is called Forbes. The United Nations use this all the time now, called the freedom of religion or belief. So because some new kind of religions had been established or emerged in different countries. Some just simply call them part of a human belief. They don't want to call themselves as a religion, such as Falun Gong. They just call themselves as a belief. So in any case, so this is part of the freedom of religious belief or conscience. And even the Chinese own constitution in Article 36 states that the Chinese citizens should have freedom of religious belief. And then the thorny, the most controversial, or the dictators try to take advantage of the second part of the component of religious freedom of religion or religious freedom is the manifestation of religion. That means the freedom to practice your faith. So faith is not just a private matter, so-called, just like you can just keep that to yourself or in your home or to your church building, and after you walk out of your home or walk out of your church building, then you should not carry your faith. And in fact, both according to the definition, again, in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, it says explicitly that the human being should be guaranteed for freely expressing or manifesting of your own belief, both in public and in private. And so both individually and in group. So this really, gives a very clear definition, including the faith. As long as you practice your faith in a peaceful manner, and you should enjoy that religious freedom. And certainly the word peacefully is very meaningful, and you can't just, in the name of your religion or religious belief or any belief, to commit criminal activities. And you can't, in the name of anything, to actually commit criminal activities, right? So we and you are manifesting your belief not only in your church, in your homes, but in public square. So the very notion said, a naked public square means freedom from religion. It's a very kind of modern, almost atheistic or secularized idea, try to drive out religion from public square, and especially for Christian faith. So I think we set up the parameter of the two fundamental components of religious freedom. It includes both the component of freedom of religious belief and also the practice, the manifestation, and in public square specifically of your belief. And you certainly can practice your faith in your from voting to policy making based on your religious oriented convictions, and that's this part of your religious belief or freedom. And you shouldn't subject for that restriction or crackdown. Now we need to come to what's happening in Hong Kong after the imposition of this brutal national security law in Hong Kong in July 1st. And we already learned in the past a couple of months since the July 1st, many hundreds of arbitrary arrest, indictment in the name of the national security law, namely when you are accused of engaging secessionism, like separation of Hong Kong from mainland China, and the terrorism means protesters, or subversion of state power if you engage a peaceful referendum, or even the denouncing the Hong Kong chief executive, that called it a kind of subversion of state power, or criticize any government leaders. And the final one is collusion with foreign entities. Means if you talk with any foreigners or foreign entities working with foreign NGOs or governments. So the latest development has been, number one, the Beijing puppet Hong Kong Chief Executive Carrie Lam basically announced very arbitrarily, in the name of COVID-19, the Communist Party virus, that the Hong Kong legislative election will be postponed for 1 year. It was supposed to happen in early September 2020, and she just arbitrarily postponed to 2021. And this is certainly a deliberate effort try to sabotage the opportunities for the pan-democracy candidates to win a majority of the election if it happens today or in September. And number two is there are 6 overseas Hongkongese, who live in different countries, are suddenly found they are put on the most wanted list by these Hong Kong national security kind of a commission or committee, and the Hong Kong police. And their crime, and they were accused of violation of the national security laws, and engaging the 2 crimes primarily. One is the subversion of state power. The second one was the collusion with foreign forces. And one of the most ridiculous one, the case was brother Samuel Chow. Samuel Chow was born in Hong Kong, but had immigrated to California for many years. In fact, he had been an American citizen for over 25 years, and yet he was found on the Hong Kong's most wanted list for colluding with the American government. And come on, he's a very dedicated Christian, of course. We know his father is a very well-known Baptist church pastor in Hong Kong, Pastor Chu Yao-ming, and I know him very well. He actually helped my family when we were stuck in Hong Kong from late 1996 to 1997, before we were accepted into the U.S. as refugees. And Reverend Chu had helped almost all of the Tiananmen students, Tiananmen Square students movement leaders who escaped out of China by his help. And he provided safe harbor and hiding them before they were resettled in different Western countries. And so his son, Samuel Chow, all of a sudden found he could be arrested anywhere if he travels to nearby Hong Kong or around the neighborhood of China, and for talking with the U.S. governments, for discussing the plans to protect Hong Kong's freedom and democracy with the U.S. Congressional leaders, member of Congress, and Secretary of State, and the White House. I mean, come on, this is his country, United States American citizen. And then we learned a more dramatic arrest, also recently in early August, August 10th. All of a sudden, the Chinese security agents in Hong Kong basically made the most high-profile arrest. This time, the arrest the hero for Hong Kong's democracy, Mr. Jamie Lai. Jamie Lai, L-A-I, is the founder of Hong Kong's independent media called Next Digital media, and the one of the really rarely only, perhaps the only independent newspaper in Hong Kong called Apple Daily. And he himself was born in Guangzhou and in 1950s, and he's already 72 years old. When he was 7-year-old, his father escaped to Hong Kong from Guangzhou to seek for really a living because of the Communist Party, Chairman Mao's miserable policies. And then, just because of that, Jimmy Lai's mother was sent to re-education through labor camp. I mean, here, they were, both parents were gone, and Jimmy Lai had to live with her younger sister and another elder sister with a disability after another 5 years, and Jimmy Lai could not really make a living anymore, so he escaped to Hong Kong and working very hard in these factories, and God bless him, and he became a dedicated Catholic believer, and then he became a billionaire by establishing his own corporations in 1990s. And in 1995, he established this Apple Daily newspaper and started really speaking up for freedom and advocating for democracy. And he has helped a lot of Tiananmen Square students, leaders, and protesters as well. So that impact his life. So that's why when the Hong Kong's freedom had been eroded quickly, especially even after the so-called extradition to Beijing law was being considered, the umbrella students movement started, and so Apple Daily has become a cheering, leading voice for those vulnerable, persecuted students. And certainly after the July 1st, this national security law imposed, he knows that he must be perhaps the number one target by the Beijing regime, and he could choose to immigrate to anywhere in the world. He's also a British citizen, and he has permanent residence in Taiwan, and he travels to the U.S. very frequently, and in fact, he all of a sudden, when he was arrested, he was accused of colluding with foreign forces for his discussion about Hong Kong's freedom when he traveled to United States in 2019. And Vice President Mike Pence met with him, had an extensive discussion in the White House with him. during his visit, and Secretary Pompeo met with him, and so do many members of Congress. And so he was arrested, and not only he himself was arrested, his two sons, two adult sons, were also arrested. So that really reminded everybody that the Communist Party is really trying to use the same tactic by arresting your family members as hostages to break your will. And at the same night, same night actually, when Jimmy Lai was arrested, another prominent Hong Kong students leader, 23-year-old leader Agnes Chow, she was also arrested. And she was very prominent during the Umbrella Students Movement, and also part of the co-founders of the Hong Kong Demosisco Party that she and Joshua Wong and Nathan Law co-founded, and even got some of their candidates elected into the Hong Kong legislatures. And 4 other executives of Apple Daily were also arrested. So the same night, 10 kind of freedom fighters were arrested. And Jimmy Lai and Agnes Chow, they're both Christians, and as well as another Hong Kong democracy leader, Martin Lee, who is 82 years old. He was also arrested a few months ago. And he's also a very dedicated Catholic believers too. And one of my friends, a University of Hong Kong professor of law school, Benny Tai, was also fired after serving prison for organizing kind of in theoretical support of the Hong Kong protest. So these are the these arbitrary arrests in the name of this so-called national security law shows the very evil nature of this campaign. And I want to name in 4 areas briefly that religious freedom in Hong Kong could be impacted very, very strongly. And the number one area is I think this national security law would impact the very religious exchanges activities between Hong Kong and China. And we know that many people in Hong Kong, especially the different Christian denominations, there are 1,400 churches in Hong Kong, and the Christian population in Hong Kong perhaps is estimated with 14 to 20% out of the 7.4 million Hong Kongese. So it's a very large group, and Hong Kong had been used really as a real hub to support the persecuted churches in China. And after the national security law, this will be these activities will be in danger. Certainly, there won't be any Bible smuggling from Hong Kong. And number 2 is theological education. There are over 140 different Christian NGOs and many Christian theological seminaries in Hong Kong as well. And over the years, across the denomination, there are over 20 some denominations in Hong Kong. Those almost every denomination or every seminaries in Hong Kong and every churches of this 1,400 had been engaging one way or another in supporting the theological education activities, in support both the house churches. Some chose to be working with government-sanctioned churches. So with this national security law, these things are going to be in jeopardy. Number 3 is the charity work. And many of these denominations, perhaps most known, like from Methodist and the Lutheran churches, I mean, they had been engaging very, very actively on charitable work in China. I mean, but now with the national security law, if you are founding clothing with foreigners, because these denominations are international, they receive funding from the headquarters, from London, from Washington, D.C., from St. Louis, from Africa even. And all of a sudden, they will be found as clothing with the foreign forces and channel funding to China. That could be a very dangerous thing. And finally, the last thing that I want to mention in particular is the for religious freedom for the foreigners in Hong Kong. I mean, Hong Kong, there out of the 7.4 million people in Hong Kong, at least 5% are foreigners. This is like 400,000 people are foreigners living in Hong Kong, and many of them have religious faith. The Filipinos, there are over 110,000 Filipinos. Most of them are dedicated Catholics. And there are over 85,000 Americans. There are over 40,000 Britons. And certainly there are several million who holds the BNO, the British overseas citizens, nationals. And so they are all in jeopardy, I think, because when you are found in supporting or fellowship and with those protesters in Hong Kong, you certainly will be in danger. So I just want to kind of use this time to ask all of you to continue to remember those who are in bond and those who are in danger, actually, in Hong Kong, and to pray for them, to, if you have friends over there, remind them what's happening and what's going to happen, and to also support them in any way that we can find. And thank you very much for your attention. I mean, God continue to bless you.
Order your copy of this program from the GLC bookstore by calling the numbers or visiting the website on your screen. Please include the program number when ordering.